Before we start this retrospective, I need to apologize. I made a big mistake in the last video. This is not Sergeant Siler. Gary Jones is portraying Sergeant Walter Harriman and Sergeant Siler is portrayed by Dan Shee. Both will appear as regular characters throughout the rest of the show. That aside, following the events of the previous episode, the SGC receives an incoming traveler and Sergeant Harriman tells General Hammond that SG-1 is coming through, before the gate even opens. This marks the second time, by the way, that O'Neill is involved with this kind of situation. Not just anybody can send a message through subspace ahead of time, supporting my ongoing theory that the Colonel is psychic. Anyway, Hammond is shocked by the sudden arrival as SG-1 just went through the gate. While waiting for them to arrive, the Stargate suddenly draws more than twice its usual operating power and begins to destabilize. Suddenly, Daniel and Teal'c fly high out of the gate. The circuitry around the gate blows, the gate shuts down. Colonel O'Neill and Captain Carter nowhere to be seen. Said captain somehow wakes up in a chilling location, right next to her officer. O'Neill wakes up and immediately recognizes the joyful pain of a broken leg. Carter theorizes that Dr. Jackson must have entered the wrong address, but that's not possible because they're not here even though they went through the gate first. She also assumes that this planet seems to be in some kind of ice age. Also, she can't find the DHD. In other words, the best word to describe their current situation would be shit. Meanwhile, with Daniel unconscious, Teal'c explains to the general that as soon as SG-1 stepped through the gate, they were shot at with energy weapons from all sides, so the colonel immediately ordered a retreat, which they did, but they're not here for some reason. The two check on the Stargate where Sergeant Sylvester Siler, portrayed by Dan Shee, yes, I know again, but this punching bag of the series deserves an introduction, tells the general that the gate will be ready in approximately 24 hours at minimum. Back in Iceland, Samantha tries to treat Jack with her very first own splint on a living patient, which is when the two get to talk for a bit. This is the Colonel's 9th broken bone and the second time his leg is broken. In the 80s, he accidentally failed a Black Ops parachute jump, but he has to stop the story because the captain is kinda torturing him by readjusting the splint repeatedly. Anyway, after the jump, O'Neill had several broken bones and needed about 9 days to get out of Iraq on his own. That is f***ing impressive, by the way. Anyway, change of topic, they go over their rations. They got enough for a little over 3 days and, thanks to the ice, they have enough water to make it through too. But the biggest issues are heat and energy. One fuel cooker, one thermal blanket and a few flashlights won't last too long in a dark sub-zero cave. Noticing that she's pretty much about to lay down and give up, the colonel gives Carter a pep talk about how they will definitely be rescued, and if there's no possibility for being rescued right now, that the two of them better work on making it possible instead of losing hope. Back in Stargate Command, Dr. Jackson wakes up. Back in Coolio, Carter found the DHD completely frozen over, so they decide to get to work on it. However, the captain notices that the colonel's chest seems to hurt as well, to which he merely replies that he may have a few broken ribs, but he didn't want her to put another splint on it. Trying to take her mind off of things, she changes the topic. She came up with 3 theories as to what happened with Daniel and Teal'c. The first theory, they're still here somewhere, no. The second theory is Dr. Jackson did not misdial as presumed, but for some unknown reason, they got back to Earth and the two of them are stuck in this place. The third theory is both duos got sent to different planets. O'Neill tells her to assume the second one is correct. Which is when Samantha tries to mathematically explain to the colonel their chances of being rescued, but he's not having any of that and tells her to keep working instead. Sergeant Siler gives the green light for the use of the Stargate, and Hammond immediately sends a probe to the planet where SG-1 was ambushed. The probe shows that the two aren't around the gate, but then the enemies begin to open fire on it, destroying it in the process. The general scraps the rescue mission as a result. In the meantime, Jack invites Samantha to some tasty melted ice. But he soon regrets that decision because she suddenly keeps listing down several possibilities as to what happened with the Stargate.
So, I've been thinking that the Stargate could have malfunctioned because the brains could have
I just wanted to water and chill! Dr. Jackson and Sergeant Siler come up with a theory that the energy in the Stargate from the overload couldn't have just disappeared. Instead, it must have connected itself to a Stargate in between the enemy planet and Earth. Hammond is about to refuse, but Daniel makes it clear that if the two of them are in any of these worlds, they should be injured and somewhere near the Stargate, so the SG teams won't have to spend much time looking around. Near one of the Stargates, the DHD is finally uncovered, but not without costs. The Colonel is coughing up blood due to his inner bleeding. The Captain dials Earth, but the gate won't work. Carter assumes that the control interface of the DHD must be malfunctioning somehow and that they have to dig up the entire device, but O'Neill insists on taking a rest first because they've been awake for who knows how long already. After about half of the search is done, General Hammond officially declares Colonel O'Neill and Captain Carter as MIA, but assures Daniel that they'll keep looking nonetheless. Knowing that this means that time is running out, the archaeologist grows more frustrated as he can't help but feel that he's missing something obvious. In the morning, Carter is cursing the gate for not working even after trying to fix it for 12 hours. She explains to the Colonel that the fuel cooker is empty after she tried to heat up his frostbitten leg. Knowing that she's pretty much at her limit, Jack orders her to take the remaining resources and dig her way up to the surface instead. Tiak returns to Earth, coming back from the last planet on the list, and George calls off the search until anyone comes up with a better idea. A few hours later, an exhausted captain ignored her officer's orders and still keeps trying to dial Earth, causing a slight rumbling within the SGC. Daniel witnesses it. For some reason, Tiak shows up and the doctor explains to him that he finally figured it out. Jackson immediately heads to the general and begins to explain. There's one world on the list that they haven't searched yet: Earth. There must be a second Stargate on Earth because the energy literally couldn't have gone anywhere else except a second gate. Tia confirms the possibility of the theory and that the Goa'uld rarely place two gates on one planet if the first one is lost. Hammond is wondering how they're supposed to find the location, but thanks to Daniel reminding him that the Stargates are causing light earthquakes if not stabilized, they find the location in Antarctica with a seismograph and the correct time.
What happens when you dial your own phone number? Wrong person to ask. What happens when you dial your own phone number?
You get a busy signal.
Exactly. What else could cause a vibration like that unless they were trying to dial home? They couldn't get through. I mean, even if their 7 symbol looked different, the coordinates of the two gates would still be exactly the same.
Realizing that she ran out of options, Samantha is being ordered, again, to take the remaining resources and head to the surface. This time, she actually follows the order. She painstakingly climbs up a wall of ice as Jack gives her his goodbyes over the radio. Finally digging her way up to the surface, she finds herself surrounded by nothing but snow. Carter gives up hope and slides her way back down to the Colonel to die alongside him. The next time Samantha wakes up, she sees Daniel's face as they are being rescued. The episode ends as General Hammond gazes upon the second, or I suppose in this case it's actually the first, Stargate still glowing from an activation attempt. And that was the 17th episode of the first season of Stargate SG-1. This is among my favorite episodes from the first season, even though Tiak doesn't really get to do much. It shows a different side of each character. Jackson's growing frustration when approached with a serious deadline. Carter gets desperate if she can't mathematically solve her problems, or even considering Hammond's very quick decision making, which gives the impression of experience with this kind of situation. Anyway, long story short, it's a very enjoyable episode that primarily deals with how each character responds to a search and rescue, and it pulls it off very nicely in my opinion. The plot of this episode becomes relevant from Season 2 onward, and the new Stargate will play a big role in the future. With that in mind, I hope you had an enjoyable time watching, and I may see you next time with another episode of Stargate SG-1. Until then, have a good one.